Tonight, we're turning a voice from inside the prison system. More than 2 million people are currently incarcerated in the United States. In most states, people serving felony sentences lose their right to vote while in prison. One man at the Woodburn Correctional Facility is proposing a different approach. Atik Weston has drafted what he calls the Incarcerated American Vote Act, a federal legislative proposal that will protect the right to vote for incarcerated individuals, unless they've been convicted of specific offenses such as treason, espionage, terrorism. In his proposal, Weston argues that voting is not just a civic duty, but a constitutional and human right, one he believes should be not automatically disappeared behind prison walls. He points to existing Supreme Court precedent and calls for clear policies in correctional facilities nationwide to ensure access to absentee ballots and voter registration materials. Weston has been incarcerated for more than 17 years and says he has never had an opportunity to cast a ballot. Weston has been incarcerated for more than 17 years, and he says he has never had the opportunity to cast a ballot. Though his advocacy, he's calling for what he describes as inclusion, rehabilitation, and meaningful participation in democracy. We're sharing this message and examining the broader debate around voting rights, incarceration, and what civic participation means in America. Here's Atik Weston.
What's going on, Radio Catskill? It's always a blessing to speak with you all. To begin, the Incarcerated American Vote Act is specifically designed to protect and preserve an American citizen's constitutional right to vote throughout their terms of incarceration, unless that person has been tried and convicted of a disqualifying offense, as determined by Congress, to reasonably justify the institutional suspensions of these rights in the furtherance of justice, public safety, and national security. My federal legislative bill seeks to define vote disqualifying offenses as criminal convictions for treason, espionage, a hate crime, an act of terrorism, or participating in an insurrection or rebellion. To me, these 6 categories of offenses represent the most vile threats against our public society and American government, to legitimately warrant the censoring of a citizen's prejudiced vote for being considered by a government that they specifically sought to degrade and disrupt. In 1974, the United States Supreme Court, in a case titled O'Brien versus Skinner, legal citation 414 U.S. 524, ruled that it was unconstitutional to deprive pretrial detainees the right to vote by absentee ballot while they were incarcerated in jails. Since then, a load of state Supreme Courts have begun ordering prison administrators to devise policies that afford incarcerated individuals the right to vote by absentee ballot, at least as pretrial detainees who are incarcerated but are still awaiting trial. Even so, the problem still remains that even in states where incarcerated individuals are provided the right to vote, their voting rights are still negligently being obstructed due to a lack of prison policies that afford them access to absentee ballots and voting instructions. Knowing this, my legislative bill now seeks to enact a simple policy that specifically directs each correctional institution within all 50 states of America to devise policies that provide incarcerated individuals access to all of the voter registration documents that they will need to effectively participate within government-held elections. We're talking about over 2 million prisoners nationwide. In sum, rather than to broadly ban incarcerated citizens from voting based upon any felony conviction, this policy will only restrict incarcerated individuals from voting if they are currently confined and convicted for one of the most serious offenses, such as treason, espionage, a hate crime, an act of terrorism, or participating in an insurrection or rebellion. The 2023 Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology estimated that there are currently about 2.3 million people incarcerated within approximately 3,100 county jails, 1,800 state prisons, and around 110 federal institutions across the United States of America on any given day. I then read in the Mississippi Law Journal that the United States of America single-handedly accounts for 20% of the world's incarcerated population, even though the United States only makes up less than 5% of the world's population. These astounding statistics decisively confirm that millions of American citizens' constitutional rights are unduly being hampered and infringed upon immediately upon their introduction into the criminal justice system without regard to the innocence or crimes of incarceration. These facts need to change and fast if we expect to preserve the sacred integrity and inviolable principles of our American Constitution. Because how can we say that our Constitution is allegedly inviolable when it's being violated on a daily basis by our own government institutions? And I believe that my legislative proposals are the first step towards protecting these interests for millions of American citizens like myself who have unduly had my constitutional rights violated, censored, and restricted simply as a result of my placement within the criminal justice system. Also, I want to make this clear. You don't forfeit your constitutional rights and your ability to be human the moment you're arrested or convicted. Incarcerated individuals are just as capable of holding persuasive political opinions as any other conscious people participating in government politics. Furthermore, a person's right to vote is a form of speech and expression through participation in government process, and that your vote symbolically represents your ideological perspectives. Therefore, your First Amendment rights are automatically inseparable from your right to vote. And if you would like to delve a little deeper into these areas, a human right to free speech and expression are also acknowledged as human rights under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was signed into international law by the United Nations. Therefore, our right to vote is indeed a human right itself. With that being said, these are essentially core value rights to human existence that cannot so easily be taken away or restricted without a legitimately substantiated governmental interest. And I believe that those governmental and societal interests become implicated only after court convictions for treason, espionage, a hate crime, and active terrorism, or participating in an insurrection or rebellion against your own government. I firmly maintain my stance that the institutional walls of the prison system were designed to represent a barrier between prison and society, and not a barrier between the incarcerated and the Constitution. We still maintain our constitutional rights in prison as long as the exercise of those rights don't unduly interfere with the safety, security, and orderly running of the institution. And needless to say, our right to vote doesn't interfere with either. And these are the exact reasons why I advocate on behalf of the millions of people who have ever cycled through the criminal justice system. Because if we're talking fundamental principles, right? This country's democratic principles are founded upon the inclusions of all of its people. Every opinion is supposed to be acknowledged, every vote is supposed to be tallied, and each group's perspectives are supposed to be thoroughly analyzed and considered. But how can we say that everybody is being fairly considered in government processes when you have over 2 million prisoners' constitutional voting rights being unfairly restricted from even being considered by the American franchise? 2 million people is a very large number. That's essentially a voting block all by itself, a voting block that could expose the injustices of this notoriously flawed criminal justice system and vote to change it, a voting block that could challenge unjust conditions of confinement and vote to change it, a voting block that could collectivize against the substandard medical treatments present within prisons and vote to change it. We as incarcerated individuals have substantial interest in utilizing our constitutional right to vote in order to change our degrading realities in the prison system. And it's my position that we should be able to access these critical government processes by absentee ballot voting from prison. Not having the right to vote in prison is like not being allowed the right to exist. Plus, in our wicked society, it seems like a lot of our lawmakers don't give two damns about anything that won't bring them publicity or anyone who can't help to extend their powers of authority. So realizing this, I'm seeking to get over 2 million incarcerated human beings their right to vote so that we can properly be acknowledged and considered by our negligent as government. On a personal level, I've been incarcerated for over 17 years in my 33-year-old life for blatantly unconstitutional charges. So I personally never had the luxury of voting in any elections, even though I have developed an intense interest in formally participating in our American franchise. And if I were to vote, I would like to make it clear that I will proudly vote for the middle ground platform as an independent voter whose vote isn't being unduly influenced by red or blue party politics. Most people choose not to even vote because of how deceitful national politics appear to be. You don't really know who to trust. We only know these people by their public reputation, and their public reputation is nothing more than a polished image that they present before the camera. You know how many times I've read articles or listened to NPR news reports about voters being disappointed by the performance of the representatives that they personally voted into office? It's so crazy that we can literally vote someone into office on the basis of bolstering human rights. Then the next thing you know, we discover solid facts that these very same people have blatantly been ignoring and turning a blind eye to direct proof of human rights violations. The same exact thing that people elected them into office to protect in the first place. It's so hypocritical that it turns my stomach just thinking about it. Voting is one of the most important things that you're ever going to do in your life because it affects every aspect of it. Our vote will literally dictate the amount of human rights that we have as humans, the rules that we must follow in society, all the way down to the future that our kids will be bound to endure in the next few years. And I love my baby boy. I want him to have the perfectly successful life that I've always wanted but never had for myself. Altogether, due to the importance that our vote have on our lives, I believe that everyone should be entitled to the process, even the incarcerated. In closing, for everyone listening, you can follow me on social media and view my legislative bills in PDF file format on my Instagram profile bio at Atiq's Reforms, ATIQ''S, which is also the title of my YouTube channel. Also, big shout out to the brother Andre Norman, the founder of SecondChanceUniversity.com. His team has been traveling to each state and federal prison nationwide to motivate and empower the incarcerated population, and I respect that. And shout out to Joe Polish and the entire Genius Network for collaborating with Andre Norman and his prison reform efforts. It's inspiring to know that you guys have our backs. Prison lives matter. We still have rights, civil rights, human rights, constitutional rights. So stand up for them. Thank you, Patricio, and the whole Radio Catskill and WJFF radio network, including NPR News. I definitely respect the platform space that you've been providing to my national activism, even though I'm incarcerated. And that's from the heart. Real talk.